we've got Dave Saunders from Aro Advisers presenting today. And those of you who aren't familiar with Dave, he's owned, worked and advised for many businesses all throughout New Zealand and overseas. We now know we're moving into level 3 on Tuesday. So now is the time to set everything in place so that you're ready to go. Most of your businesses will still be restricted in how you work in level 3, so planning is going to be vital, which is great to say, but how do you actually tackle this task and where do you start? Well, today, Dave is going to guide you through one way to get started, some ins and outs and some do's and don'ts. But before I hand you off today, along the way, if you want to ask a question, just scroll down a bit and you can post the question there. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end and we'll try our best to answer them during the webinar. But if not, we will get in touch afterwards. So I'll now pass you on to Dave.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Look, here I am. I'm showered. I'm shaven. I'm wearing a cleanish shirt. I haven't quite managed to get my webcam going. Just part of the joys of working from home. Obviously, we're about 2 minutes late getting started, and that's because we've been having a couple of IT issues while we're still working through some of the kinks of working from home. All part of the fun and all part of the challenges that living through this lockdown brings with it. It is, as Melissa says, we're moving to level 3, and on the one hand, that's fantastic. On the other hand, look, my children are still going to be hanging around, learning from home, and I did have an opportunity last week to be a teacher for a couple of days, and that. Also, that reinforced really my career choices. I don't make a good teacher. So they're presently plonked in the conference room, which is the lounge down the other end of the house, watching a DVD. And with a bit of luck, that means no interruptions. So today we're talking about something that's pretty darn important. And look, I'm really conscious I'm no oil painting, and I've prepared a few slides, so let's bring those up, and hopefully everyone can see those. So getting back moving as we slowly emerge from the shutdown period. This is a truly massive subject, and we've only got an hour put aside for today. I'm going to keep some time aside for questions at the end. And as I often say, the only dumb question is the one that's not asked. So as we're going through this, if you've got a question, then as Melissa says, please scroll down to the bottom and put it in, and we'll do our level best to address all of those at the end. So I'm going to do my level best to make the next hour that we spend together as universally applicable as I can. The only way that you guys are going to get any benefit out of this is if you commit to doing something as a result of being here today. Knowledge without action is like having no knowledge at all. So I'm going to remind you of this at the end of the webinar. Commit to doing something as a result of you putting the time aside to be here today. So look, I think that's enough admin. Let's get into it. Like an awful lot of people, I spent part of my summer holiday at the beach, and every year I take myself off to a quiet spot under a tree and work through what my expectations are for the coming year. What do I see coming for 2020? Now, I predicted a lot of things, but a global pandemic and a partial shutdown in most of the developed world was not one of my predictions. Yet before the first quarter of the year was over, this is where we found ourselves. You don't have to look far to see some absolutely dire headlines. And one of the downsides of us all being stuck at home, we've got plenty of time to at least glance at these headlines as they flick across our computer screens or our phones. Pick your economic forecaster or commentator, they are almost universally saying that we're in for a rough ride. And I'm not going to disagree with them. There's no two ways about it. We're in for a bumpy old time. We're going to see some business failures, and some of these failures will be businesses in your industry. Some of us are going to be forced to make decisions we would much sooner have avoided. Decisions that are going to affect people's jobs, decisions that might affect who gets paid and who gets to put food on the table, not necessarily fun decisions. But some businesses are going to buck this trend. Some businesses will survive. Some will even thrive. Now, there are a lot of factors that will determine which businesses fail, which survive, and which thrive. Most of these factors we have somewhere between very little control over and no control over whatsoever. So we're going to spend absolutely no time looking at those today. But there is one. There is one factor that you have full control over, and it is a biggie. And just in case that's too subtle for you, what I mean is you. Yes, you. You are the person with the greatest influence over your business's success. You. Now, I don't want to load you up with more responsibility, particularly at a time when many are looking for cover. But the fact of the matter is, the person who cares the most about the success of your business is you. And so now is the time that you need to decide how you're going to respond. And there are some options. You can be like the deer in the headlights. Or maybe you want to ride your luck and just hope it all pans out for the best. Or you can accept that you're going to need to take the bull by the horns, and you might need to do a few things that are outside your comfort zone to give your business the best shot of making it through. And when I say a few things outside of your comfort zone, what I really mean is make some damn tough decisions. These decisions that you make might call into question employment of staff, or maybe they will affect the viability of another business that relies on your business. Now, I absolutely hope for the best. I hope that as we take our first little step to transition out of this lockdown phase and get back to some form of normality, whatever that form is, we do so without the widespread economic carnage that has been predicted. But as much as I hope that, I know that hope is not a strategy. So if hope isn't a strategy, what is? Let's just take a moment to define strategy. So strategy is a plan of action designed to achieve a long-term or overall aim. So we need to start with the end in mind. And when you're down in the trenches, it's easy to lose sight of why you started your business in the first place, particularly when the stress is on. But take a moment to get clear in your mind. Why do you do what you do? What path were you on toward achieving whatever it is that you've set out to do? Is that path still appropriate in the current climate? And if you're still sitting there thinking, gee shucks, this is all too hard, all of these companies have something in common. They all commenced in a downturn or a recession. So if your business is already operational, you've already got a leg up on what this lot had, and they made it work. So therefore, it's possible for others to do the same. Indeed, there are plenty of examples of businesses that have kicked off or ramped up during tough economic times. And by the way, for those of you who are sitting there going, Burger King, I'm talking about Burger King International, not Burger King here in New Zealand. They have been on the ropes for a little while. So while accepting that there will be an element of luck and some hard work, a really big part of the success, the key part that you can control, is some solid decision making. And ultimately, this is the guts of why we're here today. The quality of the choices and decisions you make now and over the coming few weeks will very likely have a significant impact on the future fortunes of your business. Right now, we need carefully considered, swift, deep thinking, followed by relentless action. However, what we often see in these sorts of times is panic. And when I talk about panic in a business context, what I mean is reactionary decision-making and very short-term thinking. And just if this is all feeling a little bit mean and nasty, if you're already feeling financially stressed out, I've got some bad news. Research shows that chronic financial stress reduces your IQ. Being under financial strain actually makes you dumber. So just when we need to be on top of our game, we've got to contend with our own stupid brain being against us too. Now, there are lots of industries that I like to look at for their norms, for how they cope with certain situations, how they deal with stuff on a day-to-day basis. And one that I really like is the airline industry. Probably not a great industry to be a part of at the moment, but they do have some really good habits. And one of those is that they've got worksheets and checklists for just about everything, from the really boring and mundane stuff to the sort of life and death emergencies that may not ever even happen during the course of a pilot's career, or if it does, are really, really infrequent. Now, when something bad happens, rather than panicking or operating on instinct, which, by the way, is the two most common responses from people, pilots reach for a workbook and they go through a checklist to help them make the best possible decisions in the moments of highest pressure, the moments when decisions need to be made quickly. They take the reactivity and the emotivity out of these really, really significant decisions. Unfortunately, most businesses don't have a manual for how they'll deal with the global spread of a pandemic and the ensuing economic turmoil that results from an enforced lockdown. But maybe there's a silver lining to all of this, or at least maybe we shouldn't be looking at this as some begrudging, painful process. So often we see businesses get into habits, bad habits that accumulate over time. And because they're so tied up in doing whatever it is that they do, they never dedicate the time and the resources and the energy to really looking closely at all the various facets of their business, holding the magnifying glass up and looking at processes or distribution channels or customer groups or how they work together with others, or so many other things. But right now, there's no excuse not to. In fact, it's probably necessary. So we have this wonderful opportunity to press pause. And we're not alone. Everyone else has to do it too. We have the equivalent of a halftime break in a Super Rugby match. We can look at what's been working and capitalize on it and tweak it. And we can look at what hasn't been working and make changes or drop it. And we know that at the same time, all of our competitors are stuck in the same boat. Now is the time that you can define what the future state of your business will look like with more flexibility than at any time probably in living memory. This is a massive occasion not to be squandered. In the words of Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. So over the next few days, we're going to add to your list of duties. And fortunately, unless your business is an essential service provider, you've got a couple of days up your sleeve. And in reality, we're really only going to need a few hours of it. All that we need now is a framework to work through, something akin to the pilot's checklist, something to give you a head start on working out where your focus needs to be. And like a good cooking show, here is one we prepared earlier. Now, there's a very, very important point I want to make here. I'm a really big fan of business planning. I will chew your ear off about business planning all afternoon if given half a chance. A good business plan should be robust and comprehensive, and it takes time to put together. That is not what this is. This is a short-term aid to help you ride through the turbulence. Long-term planning is super important and will become even more so over the coming months. We've got a separate tool set for that, and if we've got time at the end, I'll bring that up. But here and now, we need to be focused on the here and now. And that's what this tool is all about. Now, I'd love to claim that we came up with the 6 Ps framework, but in reality, we've simply upcycled someone else's work. That someone is Harvard Business Review. I'm not sure who they pinched it from, but pretty sure they didn't come up with it either. And while I remember, we're not really precious about sharing this around. At the end of the webinar, I'll pop up my email address. And if anyone wants an editable copy of this framework, all you have to do is flick me an email and I will happily share this with you. So the idea is this. We start with the now section. This is where we need to be focusing our efforts right now. And when I say now, I mean today. What's the stuff we need to do immediately so that we can successfully transition through the next few weeks? Think reopening, resources staff are going to need, supplies, material, the immediate concerns so that you're ready to go whenever it is that you've identified as the date to recommence trade. Then we shift our horizons up ever so slightly from today to 4 weeks out. This is when we're hopefully back trading, but we need to start making some proactive steps to define what shape our business will take in the future. So 4 weeks from now, what will your business look like? How will you be interacting with customers, clients, etc.? What's the stuff that's urgent, but probably going to take more than a couple of days to put in place? Then we jump out to what at the moment might feel like an eternity away, roughly 3 months out, toward the end of July, hopefully out of this lockdown. What state of the economy or what state is the business landscape going to be in? How about the makeup of your team? What's that going to be like? The idea being that once we've filled this in, we've got the equivalent of the pilot's checklist, something to help guide us as we make really significant decisions quickly, at the same time emerging to whatever normal is going to look like in a few months' time. Now, there's a really very, very important point that I want to make. Even in stable times, it's highly unlikely that everything is going to go exactly to plan. There are just too many variables and unknowns. This is even more the case right now. The purpose of this plan isn't to lock you into a course of action that come hell or high water you're going to stick to. This is a tool to help you assess where your business is at, the environment it finds itself in, and to help you figure out the best way forward with some sort of agility. And it's a great quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower. In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. The process of planning is far more valuable than the plan itself. If you do it properly, it will force you to assess a whole bunch of factors in your business that will help drive your decision making. A little side note here, I often see business plans that use language that the business owners wouldn't typically use themselves. And this is usually because they've downloaded a partially completed template or copied something from somewhere, and it's full of words and phrases like synergies, customer lifecycle, mission critical. There's nothing wrong with any of those phrases. And if that's how you speak within your organization, hey, that's cool, go for it. But don't think for a second that using buzzwords will make your plan any more valid or give you any greater chances of success. The purpose, this isn't to impress the bank or your mates or something. This is about how do we get through. And the thing that will make your business more successful right now is robust decision-making, clear and concise communication, followed by disciplined implementation. Yep. Think carefully about what you're going to do, communicate it out to everyone, and then go and do it exceptionally well. So let's go through the 6 Ps in a little bit more detail, or more specifically, let's go through how to start filling them in order to come up with the answers. First of all, we need to ask some questions. And this is a great quote from Albert Einstein. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. What I take from this quote is, the more time you spend asking questions, the better your solution to the problem will be. In my day job, too often I see people who have jumped to a conclusion without really assessing the situation, without digging into these questions. Ask lots of questions. So let's look at some of these questions. So the first P is position. With position, we're thinking about the position that we are in right now. This includes confronting reality. If we only have a couple of bucks in the bank account, the time to do something about it is now. Now, with all of these questions, we might not know the exact answer, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a crack at figuring them out anyway. The sort of stuff that we're going to look at around position is your market. What does your market look like now? How has the shutdown affected the market and your competition? Given what you know, how ready is your business to recommence? Do you need to put processes or physical infrastructure in place, nuts and bolts type stuff? And look, if you're not already all over the level 3 requirements, it's time to start. business.govt.nz and worksafe.govt.nz both have some really useful resources. Get on there and understand what you can and can't do at the various levels. So we also look at the financial position piece. And if you're a director of a company, you have certain responsibilities. One of those responsibilities that is not well understood is this: not allowing, agreeing, or causing the business to be carried out in a way likely to create substantial loss to the company's creditors. So your responsibility as a director goes beyond just your responsibility to the company and the shareholders. You're also responsible to the creditors, the people who have lent you money, the people who have provided supplies on account, and so on. We could spend an entire webinar just on the role of governance, but that's not what we're here for today. If you are a director of a company and you're not sure what your responsibilities are, a really good place to learn a little bit more about this is the Companies Office website, companies.govt.nz. Check it out. A very big question: is how you've operated in the past going to be viable in the future? So if you're a tourism-based business, this might be somewhere that you need to spend quite a bit of time. It's worth noting that these are just some of the questions that you should ask yourself, and it's a little bit hard in a webinar format when there's a diverse range of businesses to cover off everything that might apply. When we do this in a facilitated way, one-on-one, we tend to go through a really long list of questions on each of the P's. But for the sake of this exercise, channel your inner Albert Einstein, come up with questions that are applicable to your business. So the next P is perspective. This could equally be titled people, because at the guts of it, it's all about people. Who we have on our team, how they work together, and so on. When I say team, I do mean wider than employees on your payroll. This can include contractors, key suppliers, your advisory team, or the people that you go to for guidance, others in your marketplace. A few years back, I had a lady by the name of Bronwyn who was on my team. She worked for me, and Bronwyn was really good at her job. She was also highly social, which I'm not. Now, for me, the thought of working from home for perpetuity is quite appealing. My commute is walking up the stairs, which takes 24 seconds. If I'm in a rush, I can do it in less than 15 seconds. My office at home has everything I need. It's got a good view, and it's easy enough for me to keep in touch with everyone. So I'm happy as working from home. For Bronwyn, who was highly social, a long period working from home would have seemed like a cruel and unusual punishment. So for someone like her, we would need to build something into her workday so that she could still feel connected. Because when she felt connected, that was when she was at her best. What do you need to do for your team to make sure there's still that connection, to make sure your team is still going to be able to be at their best? So perspective, all about the internal people stuff. Who are we going to be when we come out of this? Next up is the external people stuff, promotion. A lot has changed in the last 4 weeks or so. How about your customers? In fact, should you be changing your customers? Have you reviewed and identified who your target market customers are? And a quick digression here. I often ask businesses who their target market customers are, and their answer is everyone. I'm not going to get into the details of it right now, but the research shows the more tightly defined your ideal target market customer is, the broader your appeal will be. Yeah, the smaller the niche you focus on, the wider the net you cast. So if you're a business-to-business based business, how are you going to be getting around to all of your customers and clients or your potentials, your prospects? And how are you going to be giving them the good news that you're back in business? Perhaps more importantly, how are you going to interact with them as we go into level 3 or level 2? If you're a B2C business, same question. If you're a retailer or an hospo, do your customers know how to interact with you? Now, I'm a bit of a caffeine addict, and as much as it's slightly embarrassing to admit it out loud, I have slowly become something of a coffee snob. I hate myself for it, but it is what it is. I'm lucky with where I live. There's lots and lots of choice for cafes and coffee shops, and look, that's the case throughout much of Auckland. But one in particular has been hammering social media about how to place an order and how to do contactless pickup. Now, I'm not so naive to think that contactless pickup is going to be the great cure-all for the entire hospo industry. But I've had a conversation with my neighbour from across the road last night, and she went into great detail about how much she was looking forward to getting back to this particular coffee shop and putting her order in. The reason I tell you this, if that shop hadn't put out how to interact with them, neither her nor I would be thinking about going there, and we certainly wouldn't be discussing it in raised voices across the road. Pretty sure half the neighbourhood heard. So last thing on promotion, what are you going to do to entice customers to your business? Is there some sort of marketing campaign, some sort of reopening special, or ideally something a little bit more innovative that you can do to lift your profile in the target market customer's mind? It's really hard to judge public sentiment while stuck in a bubble. But right now, at this particular moment, there is probably a heightened desire from a bunch of consumers to buy from locally owned small businesses. So good time to be capitalizing on that sentiment. So the next P is plan. Once we've reviewed where we're currently at, we can start making plans accordingly. So thinking back to our 6 Ps framework, these plans are for stuff that we can do right now. How can we make the best of the situation? Are there opportunities that will likely present themselves? What advantages do we have over our competitors, and how can we capitalize on those? How can we do this stuff quickly? These are short-term plans and need to be really, really focused, and we'll come back to that in just a second. But first, this is possibly my very favorite saying. If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. Often I hear from people that they don't have a plan because they want to be flexible and nimble. My response is always the same. Imagine you went to a country that you'd not traveled to before. You didn't know the geography and maybe you didn't even speak the language. How valuable would a map be? Right now we are in uncharted waters, so the same goes for your business. A plan will help guide you through. It will be like your map. So next up, we've got projects, and this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we put the answers to the above questions and start breaking them down into actionable steps. So how do we do that? Well, first up, anything that we write down here should pass the SMART test. And if you're not sure what the SMART test is, it is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Yeah. So let's imagine that we're a retailer for a moment. An example of a SMART objective might be implement a new e-commerce platform and integrate it into our website by 30th of April 2020. It's specific. There's absolutely no wiggle room as to what it is. It's measurable. It'll either be in place or it won't. I'm no IT expert, but let's imagine it's attainable. 30th of April is still a few days away, 24 usable hours in a day and all that. It's relevant, as a decent online presence will help us sell. And we know when it's going to be completed because we've got that deadline date of the 30th of April, so it's time-bound. It's a SMART objective. So we also need some sort of mode of accountability to ensure that these get delivered. And my favorite is who, what, when. It's really quick and easy. You can run it off a spreadsheet or Google Docs, whatever you want, online, 3 columns, easy as that. Who's doing it? What is it that they're going to do? And remember, we need to be specific. We need to be smart. And when is it going to be completed by? Who, what, when. Easy as that. So back to projects. We need to break these projects down into actionable steps. Prioritize them. What needs to be done first? And then track them to make sure they get done. And this is where you want to get the team involved. Many hands make light work. This doesn't all need to sit on the shoulders of the business leaders or the business owner, whoever it is that's in charge. If ever there was a time for staff to put their hands up to take on a bit more responsibility, now is that time. And if they needed any encouragement, just look at the predicted unemployment statistics. The best way that they can help is to do a bit of mahi. So as we're going through this, we should also be doing some sense checking. Are we asking the right questions? Are we working on the right stuff? All of this should be open to being challenged, and being challenged by everyone, the whole team. Are we going in the right direction, or is there a better alternative? Because if there's a better alternative, surely as the business leader, you want to hear about it, right? Now, when going through this, a really common response is to try and do everything, take everything on all at once. But there are only so many hours in the day and only so many resources. If you've ever done any betting on horses, you'll know that backing every horse on the track is a losing strategy. Same here. This is a fabulous quote from a gentleman who is known as the father of modern management, Peter Drucker. No business can do everything. Even if it has the money, it will never have enough good people. It has to set priorities. The worst thing to do is a little bit of everything. This is the important line here. This makes sure that nothing is being accomplished. It's better to pick the wrong priority than nothing at all. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So once we're clear on our priorities, we next need to look at our preparedness. Can we actually implement what we've identified? Now, the first question here refers to our headspace. Where are we at mentally? And particularly for the leaders of the business owners. So elephant in the room, business owners, business leaders often aren't the best at sharing their emotions. For many, the whole COVID-19 shutdown period is causing a hell of a lot of stress. Research has shown that stressed employees have reduced performance, higher error rates, and poorer quality of work. And hopefully you've picked up that the same is going to apply to business leaders, i.e. yourself. If you're stressed out, you are going to have reduced performance. You're going to have a higher error rate, and you're going to be spitting out a poorer quality of work. And if you're stressed out to the max, for goodness sakes, don't suffer in silence. There are resources out there to help, and some of them come from unexpected places. For example, if you subscribe to Xero, they offer free confidential mental health support. And if you need it, for goodness sakes, take it up. Other people rely on your business, staff, suppliers, customers. So if not for yourself, do it for them. If your head is not in the game, you're disadvantaged at the outset. So when it comes to resources, do we have what we need to implement what we've got planned? Do we have the physical stuff? If not, can we beg, borrow, or barter for what we need? Nope, barter, not steal. There are going to be some opportunities that come out of the woodwork. And look, when the COVID-19 levels system was announced, levels 1 through 4, it would have been easy to predict that some businesses in the food service space would come unstuck. However, unless you had intimate knowledge, most of us probably wouldn't have picked Anatares Group or Tango Investments, the former owners of the Burger King license for New Zealand. Their demise is going to present an opportunity for someone to probably pick up a bit of a bargain. One that even 4 weeks ago, I certainly wouldn't have picked. Now, not all opportunities are going to be taking over a failed fast food business, nor will they necessarily be so obvious or high profile. But if you're not prepared, the opportunities that are around just might slip you by. Now, I've already heard reports of larger organisations and overseas organisations looking to snap up distressed businesses or parts thereof. So, this is already happening. And speaking in very general terms, throughout history, the times when there has been the greatest concentration of wealth transfer has been when economies go into, and even more so when they come out of, recession. Yeah, that's the time when most wealth changes hands. And unfortunately, usually it goes the wrong way. It goes from people who already don't have all that much to people that have a lot. So let's break that trend. Get your business into a position that it can capitalize on the opportunities. Now, one final note on preparedness. The last thing to think about. What are the consequences of doing nothing? If we don't do anything, if we carry on as usual, as if nothing has happened, what do we expect to happen? And if the answer isn't very different to what you expect from doing a whole lot of work, then you need to try again. You need to try harder on working through this. If it's an absolutely terrifying outcome, then, if nothing else, maybe that answer will help stir you into action. Yep. What's going to happen if you don't take action? So now we've worked our way through the first column, the now column. It's time to jump to 4 weeks from now, and this the 28 days column. And so when we talk about position, we're talking about the position that we expect to be in 28 days. Yeah, the perspective we expect to have in 28 days, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. So we work through that, and then we get into the 90 days. Now, as you go through this exercise, you may well jump backwards and forwards. And some of what you initially put down in one column might change based on what you were planning to get to in a few weeks' time. That's all part of the process. And in fact, actually, when I do this with someone, one of the things that I like to see, and particularly if you're doing this, writing with the old-fashioned ballpoint pen, is scribbles and arrows and stuff shifting around. That's part of the process. That shows that you are making assessment as you go through. So this is all open to being challenged throughout, as you do the planning process and as you put it into place. So next up, I'm going to share something with you that will increase your odds of success. And it's so simple to do, it'll feel like you're cheating. Now, this isn't some crazy crank theory that I've come up with. It is actually backed by research to improve your odds of success. The simplest thing you can do to improve your odds of success. Are you ready for it? Studies show that writing down your plans and goals significantly improve your chances of achieving them. How simple is that? Write it down. When I ask people about their plans, they often say they have a plan and it's in their head. My response is this: I've got a 180-foot super yacht in my head. They're both about as real as each other right now. But the difference between the two is that if you write the business plan down, it becomes real. If it stays in your head, it's just an idea. Now, I don't care if you use the 6 Ps framework, a template that you've downloaded from the interwebs, or a blank sheet of paper. If you have something that is of fundamental importance to the future of your business, put the 30 seconds worth of effort in that is required to write it down. Writing down. Studies show writing down your plans and goals significantly improves your chances of achieving them. So let's summarize what we've gone through so far. The winds of change have already blown. It's happened. With breathtaking speed, the economy has changed, and now it's up to us to play catch up. This change is going to be with us for at least a number of months, but probably much longer. Some businesses will thrive, some will stumble along, others will unfortunately go the way of the former owners of Burger King in New Zealand. The only factor you have complete control over is how you respond to this time. And let me be really clear, it is going to be tough and it is going to take some effort. If we need to solve a difficult problem, we should spend most of our time asking questions. By extension, the way to figure out the right path for your business is to channel your inner Albert Einstein, sorry, get his name right, and ask questions. And we should use some sort of framework to facilitate this. And the one we went through today is the 6 Ps: position, perspective, promotion, plan, projects, and preparedness. This model has a very short horizon, only looking 3 months out, and it's all about realigning our business to give us the best shot, not only surviving, but being one of the ones who thrives coming out the other side, wherever that might be. And look, just a little sidebar there, if you do need to make a fundamental change to your business, if going through this exercise you realize that you need to do some sort of pivot, I encourage you, plan it out thoroughly and execute quickly. It is like pulling off a sticking plaster. The quicker you do it, the less pain there is. Anyway, finally, if we commit to actions in writing, we are more likely to achieve them. Write it down. So we've covered off a really big subject here pretty damn quickly. And if you're sitting there with your wheels spinning or thinking that you need some more help with this, please do reach out to us. Get in contact. And this email is a simple way to find us. If you did want some one-on-one help, depending on your business, there may be some NZTE funding available. we're one of the organisations on NZTE, but there is plenty of others. But I'm happy to tell you how to access that as well. Just drop us an email. I also said that if you wanted an editable copy of the 6 Ps framework, I'm more than happy to share it. Just drop an email to us. We love to hear from you because small businesses are the backbone of New Zealand's economy, and we want to help support you guys to succeed. So more than happy to share what we've got. Lastly, at the start, I mentioned that the only way you get any value out of this is that if you committed to doing something. So I encourage you now, grab a bit of paper and write it down, because as we know, that makes you more likely to succeed. What is it that you are going to do as a result of the time that you've spent here today? And business owners aren't always the best at holding themselves accountable. If you want someone to hold you accountable, send us an email, tell us what it is that you're going to do, when you're going to do it by, and I will personally hold you accountable. I will follow you up when you were supposed to have done it and make sure you have. So if you want some extra accountability, we'll do that for you. So look, that's the guts of everything that I was going to go through today. Melissa, I'm going to hand back to you now, and if there's any questions, you can fire them through. If there's no questions, I guess we can all go to the pub early, and it's my shout.
Thanks, Dave. There weren't actually any questions posted, but I did have a couple of my own, if you don't mind.
Go on then, far away.
Yeah. So when businesses do start to get some cash coming in again, what's the priority of people to pay? The order of importance of who to pay?
There's a couple of different ways of looking at this. If a business was put into liquidation, there is a specific order in which bills are paid, that might be one way to go. But personally, the way that I would go is staff first. Staff should always come first. Your key suppliers second, the suppliers that essentially you can't live without, and everyone else third. And I'd probably do that in break down some sort of order of priority. But staff and those people that are central to your supply chain first. Usually IRD are really titchy about getting paid. They can, they're a little bit like the Titanic. They might be a little bit slow to catch up with you, but when they do, they will absolutely steam over top of you. But at the moment, we are in slightly unusual times. It will create some extra administration for you, but if you can't pay your tax on time, certainly what we've been advising our clients to do is to let IRD know, or we do it on their behalf, and tell them that, hey, look, when we know how we're going to be able to pay the tax, we'll let you know and we'll pay it accordingly. And actually, just on that, when you do owe people money, the best thing you can do is communicate with them. Let them know, even if you don't know when they're going to get paid. There's nothing more frustrating than knowing someone owes you money and they just disappear off the scene. They don't acknowledge it. And those are the people that are far more likely to take some sort of action that will inhibit your business down the track.
Okay, and so the second question I have is, in terms of when it comes to the planning and trying to forecast things like sales and how much to order and stuff like that, what would be your top tip at forecasting, I guess?
This is slightly different for business to business than it is for business to consumer. For business to business, hopefully you've been keeping in touch with some of your key clients, throughout this lockdown, because chances are they're all stuck at home too. And if you haven't, well, you really need to pick up the phone and do that over the next few days, because hopefully that will give you some sort of gauge of where their confidence is at. For business to consumer, forecasting what's going to walk through the door on day number one is going to be really, really hard. And it is going to be an absolute thumbsuck. So, I would be saying, well, you're probably going to get an initial bit of an uptick, and then it's going to fall away quite substantially. So I would be saying, what were we doing pre-shutdown? And, I'd be working off a percentage of that. And it'll be a significantly lower percentage. I'd love to give you a hard and fast answer, but I don't know what it is. I'd be going somewhere south of 70%.
Okay, cool. And then just one more question, and this is something that I've had clients ask me, so I thought it might be useful for you to give a little explanation in your wonderful way that you do in plain English. But a quick rundown of the tax loss carryback scheme.
Oh, okay. So tax loss carryback scheme, the idea behind this scheme is that if your business made a profit last year, it's going to have to pay provisional tax this year. But if your business is now forecasting a loss for this year, it can offset that loss against the profit that it has already filed with IRD and essentially smooth the cash flow out. So let's say you had a profit of $1,000 last year, and that means that this year you'd be paying tax on that $1,000 provisionally. Well, actually, it'd have to be higher than that, but let's use 1,000 as an example. Then let's say now you're forecasting a loss of $1,000 this year. We can offset that loss against the profit, carry that loss backwards, and that then means that both years will result in zero for taxable income. So we're offsetting our current year's loss against the taxable income from the previous year to reduce the amount of tax that we have to pay. And if you have paid provisional tax, the idea is that you can get that refunded. There is a few risks in it, and you should absolutely, if you were going, oh, that sounds like a wonderful idea, you absolutely should talk to your accountant or tax agent about it, because one of the fish hooks is that if you get the forecast wrong and you claim too much, then you will be paying IRD interest at their prescribed rate, and so you've just got to understand a little bit about how that sort of stuff works, because in reality, there's an awful lot of businesses that are saying, oh, gee, what do we expect to bring in over the course of this year? And it's really, really hard to know, because we now know when level 4 is going to come to an end. And, I sincerely hope we don't end up back here. But we're going into level 3, which I've heard people describe as level 3.9 from a business perspective. That we're still going to be pretty restricted. And I don't know when that's going to end, nor am I clear how long we'll be in level 2, or what the long-term financial implications of all of this is going to be. And so going, hey, how much are we going to make in the current financial year when we're not even 1 month into it? Is a really difficult thing to forecast accurately.
Okay, cool. We've just had a question from Yvette come through. Do you mind if we just go through that one before we finish off? I'll just read it here. Do you have any tips or references on how to approach stores to have them stock our products? I'm interested in figuring out the margins they will want to buy my products at. What should I think about before approaching them to be prepared?
It's a really good question that you've asked there, and look, it is going to vary a little bit depending on product. I'm going to make a couple of assumptions. Let's say it's a consumer-based product, and let's say it's something that's made in New Zealand. One of the things that I would be doing is I would be really playing on that made in New Zealand at the moment, presuming that is the case. The thinking through, what is it that retail businesses are going to want? They're going to want as much margin as possible, because that's going to be under a tremendous squeeze at the moment. So in terms of what's going to be compelling, how can you package up your product in a way that offers them the most margin. Yeah, and that might be some sort of trade-off between going, well, if you buy in a bigger quantity, you get a margin, you get a better margin. If you promote our products in a certain way, we'll give you a bigger clip of the ticket. That would probably be the number one thing I would think about how can we make this so that it maximizes the margin for retailers. And one of the things that I guess I would encourage you to do is put yourself in a retailer's shoes at the moment. They are going to be under enormous amounts of stress. There was NZ Property Group came under an awful lot of or copped an awful lot of flack for not offering any sort of rental relief for the businesses that for their tenants, and some of their tenants were really, really struggling even prior to this. Were not doing so well. So how can your product support their business would be the question that I would be posing to you, and then how can you promote that to your whatever stores it is that you want to sell through. Hope that helps.
Cool. Well, we're sort of coming towards the hour mark now, so it's probably time to wrap up. Did you want to say anything further before I close it off?
Look, if the final thing that I will say, and I know I've banged on about it already, but there's a lot of businesses who are probably feeling a little bit down about the current situation that we're in. One of the only decent things about it is that it's universal, or nearly universal. It just about applies to every business. So, make the most of this time. Use it to your advantage. Rather than sitting there going, oh, gee shucks, this is all a bit unfair. What can you do now? Because it's the stuff that you do now that will ultimately dictate your fortunes in the coming months and years. This is, the really, really crucial time is right now. So, if ever there was a time to be working on your business, this is it. And I really encourage all of you to do that.
Cool, thank you. Well, I hope everyone listening today has found this helpful in taking the next steps that they need to take. We'd like to thank Panuku and Waka again for putting this webinar on. As Dave mentioned, if you're keen on getting that 6 Ps template, just drop us a line at info@aroadvisors.com and we'll happily send you the Word doc for it so you can type straight into that. If you came halfway through, we'll be sending this recording to everyone who registered so you can watch back on that. Thank you again and have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.